everybody is here to make a movie together, and there's no kind of wandering off into your own department. No, well, this is in my process and all this stuff. You know, Steven knows exactly how the movie is going to go, and so it's kind of like everybody getting together and doing it. And Captain Dye is one of those elements, and he's invaluable.
On that BAR, stand by.
Good day, everyone. I'm Major Joel Searls here, and I'm working for the Marine Corps Entertainment Media Liaison Office in Hollywood. And I've got with us a very successful Marine, post his successful Marine Corps career, Captain Dale Dye. You'll know his work from working on Platoon, Casualties of War, even in Mission Impossible. He was definitely on Saving Private Ryan, and then he worked heavily with Mr. Spielberg and Mr. Hanks on both Band of Brothers and the Pacific. Good morning, Captain. Sir, how are you?
Good morning, Joel. I'm fine, thanks. Good to be with you.
Excellent. Thanks for being here. We're working on starting a new interview series here with the MLO, and Dale has been kind enough to be our first subject. So, we'd like to hear a little bit about your background. Can you share that with us?
Sure. I'm not sure of how much interest it is, but I did a little over 20 years in active duty in the United States Marine Corps. I enlisted in January of 1964. Went to boot camp at MCRD San Diego, and was originally assigned as an infantryman. I went to, in those days, it was called Infantry Training Regiment at Camp Pendleton, and wound up being an 81 Orderman, 0341. I guess that MOS is still around. And as we went on through training, I frankly, and I hope this doesn't sound negative, but I got a little bored. I knew that there was a big Marine Corps out there. I knew that the Marine Corps did so many things, and that was one of the neat things about it. It had its own inherent aviation arm. It had armor. It had artillery. It had the whole gamut of exciting things. And I was doing one of those things. And frankly, there was no war at the time, so it was a bit repetitive, a bit boring, and I ran into a guy. I think we were both young Lance Corporals at the time. And he said, look, I've got this great gig in the Marine Corps, and it's called Combat Correspondent. And I said, wait a minute, what's that about? And he said, here's the deal. He said, I can go and do anything in the Marine Corps. And as long as I can produce a picture, we weren't videographers in those days. As long as I can produce a little picture and a nice human interest story that reflects well on the United States Marine Corps, I can do it all. And I said, here's the answer. So I worked my bolt a bit and maneuvered some things, and got my MOS changed. And I went and interviewed. In those days, it was called the Informational Services Office. It's now called PAO. In fact, it's not even called PAO now. It's called Comstrat or something like that. At any rate, it has to do with military journalism and communications, both internally and externally. And that really suited me right onto a T. I thought, what a great thing. And so I managed to get my MOS changed and went through a period of training. No formal schools, because I had experience as a journalist and as a writer in high school. Went to a very, very classic, got a very classic education at a very good school, Missouri Military Academy. And so around 1966 or thereabouts, I was beginning to discover that this was right. I could really do all kinds of things in the United States Marine Corps. And I got a great look at it. I got to look at the aviation element. I got to look at armor and supporting arms. I got to look at infantry, and it gave me a great approach for the Corps. Not only what it is, but how we do things, and we do things uniquely, which is another a great cause of celebration on my part. But to get back to your story. So I made a non-commissioned officer and immediately orders to go to Southeast Asia, Vietnam. That was in mid-1967. And I began to find out why the word combat is emphasized in Combat Correspondent. Because the job was to run to the sound of the guns. And literally, we wanted to be right up where the combat was. Because in our view, that's where the stories were. That's where you got a look at Rudy in the rear rank with a rusty rifle, that little guy, who's out there just humping it and doing his thing, and nobody's paying attention. Well, we paid attention, and we wrote great little stories about him. But the important thing there is that because of the nature of the business and because of the nature of the duty, and because of the way we felt about performing it, we got a lot of combat time. When Tet of 1968 broke, I happened to be typical die luck. I'm standing right in the middle of getting ready to go for the fight in Hue City, and I fought through that particular thing. And I ended up through a series of machinations. I ended up serving off and on in Vietnam until 1970, at which point I was sent to Japan and then to Washington, D.C., and finally to the 1st Marine Brigade out in Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. At that point, I'd made gunnery sergeant and was on the list for master sergeant. And the Corps at that time, this was about 1975, and the Corps was getting ready to kind of broom out some of the detritus from the Vietnam War. We were suffering some morale problems. We were seeing some confusion about the war in Vietnam. We were surrounded by a heavy and vitriolic political atmosphere. Nobody liked the war. Everybody wanted it over, and the military wasn't held in very high regard at that point, simply because of Vietnam. And so we got a new commandant, Silent Lou Wilson, a Medal of Honor recipient. General Wilson was absolutely dead set on brooming the Marine Corps, on getting back to basics, on getting back to who we were, what we were about. And to do that, he felt that we needed to take some of our high-performing veterans, some of our senior enlisted guys, make them officers, and give them a little opportunity to influence things. Excuse me. And so, kicking and screaming, I was ordered to put in an application to become for the Warrant Officer Program. I thought, why am I doing this? I've got 13 years in the Marine Corps. I'm already a hot runner. I've got more chevrons and more rank than anyone should have at that point in the Marine Corps. I'm in my groove here. I'm doing well. And General Wilson and some senior officers said, yeah, but you can do more. And so I was selected for the Warrant Officer Program I went to Quantico in January of 1976 and was commissioned or appointed as a warrant officer and as a public affairs officer. So I was out doing all kinds of things and really getting into it. And I felt the mission increase. I felt the load on me increase, and that was just fine. Here I was, instead of so much doing it, I was directing it. I was designing it. I was ordering young men and women how to do this thing and using my experience to train them. And that was really a groove. I said, yeah, okay, this is it. Now I'm making an influence on the Corps. Now I'm helping. Now I'm doing what I think I was designed to do. And so it came along that I guess we've got to be here about 1982 or so. I had left and was stationed on the East Coast at Camp Lejeune when the commitment to the multinational force in Lebanon came up. And they needed somebody over there that understood how to do this and how to handle press and that sort of thing. And so they snatched me up, and off I went to Beirut, Lebanon in 82 and 83. I was fortunate enough, I was there about 7 months, I think, and I was fortunate enough to leave before the bombing of our battalion landing team headquarters that unfortunately killed so many Marines. But that took us to about late 1983, 84, and they decided to, for some unexplained reason, they decided that I might do some good in the recruiting service. So they sent me to New Orleans, where I was worked in the recruiting service for a while. But at that point, I had just about enough combat, and I'd had just about enough deployments and all that sort of thing. And I felt justified. I felt that I had contributed. I had done as much as I was probably going to be able to do, because I'd converted my commission and was now a captain. And I might make major, and I might make lieutenant colonel, but that, in my view, would immediately tie me to a desk, and I'd become that major weenie staff officer that everybody hates, but everybody has to go through.
Hey now, hey.
Yeah, I get it. I know, and I'm sorry, but I knew it was coming.
That's okay. It's
you make that jump into field grade, and it's either live with it or leave. And so I decided, maybe there's something else I can do. And so on a kind of a whim, I got out of the Marine Corps in 1984, late in the year, I think, or mid-year. And I hadn't really thought it over, Joel. I just decided, well, I'm going, and I'm going to do this, and off I went. That was a bit of a mistake, because I really had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, I knew a couple of things. I knew that if I became if I went to work in the defense industry and suddenly had to become a cubicle rat, I'd probably be a suicide in 6 months. And if I didn't do something that kept my mind working, that I'd be that barfly down at the VFW and fall off the stool, and I'm not there. So I looked around for some things to do, and for a while I went to work for a publication called Soldier of Fortune magazine, which I thought was going to be journalism, and actually turned out to be training guerrilla forces in Central America. So I did some time in El Salvador, Honduras, and Costa Rica, and then that wasn't going to work out because, Iran-Contra had come up and a number of other things, and it was all getting political and all getting something I didn't want any part of. So I quit that, and now I was really lost. Now I really had no idea what to do. So I sat down one evening and did one of those long periods of fuzzy-headed navel gazing that you do, and trying to see what I could bring to the table. What can I do that civilians would give a crap about? Is there something here? And I found the common denominator to be that I'd always been a movie fan, that I'd seen, I think, practically every war movie ever made. And what was similar about watching those movies was that the majority of them pissed me off. I mean, they just didn't reflect who we are, what we're about. And look, they had all of the common nonsense that pisses us all off. All of us guys who've worn the uniform, our guys and gals who've worn the uniform, and we know what's right. And then we see them make these stupid mistakes on screen. We say, why didn't somebody tell them that you didn't carry an M16 in World War II? Or why didn't they tell them, how to wear a beret? Or why didn't they tell them to get a damn haircut? And I wondered those same things. And I kind of looked at it in a Marine fashion. I said, what's needed out there is a good drill instructor. What's needed out there is somebody that can get to Hollywood, grab those people by the stacking swivel, reach up, get a hold of the operating rod handle, and snatch it smartly to the rear. I mean, they need to get squared away. We can't have this. And that's kind of how I approached it. And so, not knowing anything really about how movies are made or how the business works or anything else, I fixed bayonets. I just came out to LA and I said, all right, I'm going to find out how this works. And once I find out how this works, I'm going to fix it. That's what's called punching above your weight class. You know, I had no idea how tough this business is. But I stuck with it. I mean, the Marine Corps taught me tenacity, if nothing else. You just don't give up. Yeah, you may have made a stupid mistake, and yeah, you may be up against something you got no idea how to handle. But you charge, you go at it, you keep trying. And that's what I did. And I was really having a tough time. It took me about a year. And I thought, you know, maybe this is too much. Maybe I just can't make this work. And, you know, I had talked to everybody and they said, look, you know, just nobody's going to hire you to do this. You want them to pay you money to harass and train actors who are, you know, among the pampered elite. And you want them to do that when they've made billions of dollars without a guy like you doing that sort of thing. You're kind of presenting them an illogical proposition, and I guess looking at it from that perspective, they were probably right. But I was still unwilling to give it up, and I had learned to read the trade papers, Hollywood Reporter and Daily Variety, that sort of thing. And I think it was in Daily Variety I discovered one day back in '85, I guess it was. I saw a notice in Daily Variety that said a heretofore relatively unknown writer-director by the name of Oliver Stone was going to do a feature film, based on his own experience in Vietnam as a combat infantryman. And I said, whoa, here it is. If I can get to this guy, he'll understand what I'm proposing. He'll understand what I want to do in terms of training actors, in terms of giving them an insight to who we are as military people, how we think, how we relate to each other. And I managed, and I'm not going to tell you how I did this, but I managed, mainly because the statute of limitations probably hasn't run out, but I managed to get a meeting with Oliver Stone. Had he been a little more famous, I probably wouldn't have got that meeting, but I did. And I went through my best 2-minute drill. I said, look, here's what's wrong with military movies, and here's how we fix it. And because of his own military experience and his own combat experience, he kind of got it. He said, you know, I think you've got something here. And so I expanded into the 3-minute drill, and I said, well, now here's what we do. Here's how we train them. We make them literally live like you and I did in Southeast Asia. And he bought it. He sent me to the Philippines with 33 actors, all of whom were relatively unknowns at that point. You'd recognize them now. Forrest Whitaker and Johnny Depp and Willem Dafoe and Tom Berenger. And he said, you got 3 weeks. And that's what I did. I literally moved them into the jungles, and we lived in holes, and, you know, we ate rations twice a day unless they pissed me off, and then it was only once a day. And we trained. We lived exactly as we had lived as young Marines and soldiers in the jungle in Vietnam. And the neat thing was that it worked. My theory proved correct. What was primarily wrong in performances as soldiers among actors was that they were mimicking the last bad war movie they'd seen. You know, they were worried about how the uniform looked and how to carry the rifle. And that's all important. But what was missing, what I wanted to bring to the table, was working from the inside out, working on their heart, working on their emotions, working on their brains, teaching them how we think, how we relate to each other, how we feel, what our sardonic black humor is all about and where it comes from. And I was able to teach that in this film called Platoon. And we brought it home. I think we only had a $5 million budget, which is chump change in Hollywood. And we brought it home. It featured, by the way, a white-haired actor by the name of Dale Dye, who got his first acting role really in that film. But the neat thing, the important thing, is that it won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Oliver, and that, as they say, nothing succeeds like success in Hollywood. And so all of those people who'd been telling me that I couldn't do this thing about being a military advisor and really having an influence on how military films are made, all of those people were now calling me and saying, "Hey, you remember that meeting? I think we've got this project," and it was onward and upward ever since. Through I think we've won something like 8 Emmys now and 5 or 6 Oscars, which, you know, unfortunately is the measure of success. That and box office money are the measures of success in Hollywood, and we've done very well with that. And that probably is the longest response to "give us some of your background" that you've ever heard. But that's it. I mean, that's what you get for asking a question like that to an actor.
Thank you for that wonderful response. You definitely went in and out, weaved a great story, so it's fine. Do you have any memories that stick with you from your time in the Corps or even from your Hollywood experiences?
Yeah, Joel, there are so many memories that stick with me. The Marine Corps is seminal to me. It made me who I am. It gave me the ideas that I have. It formed my psychology. And there are so many seminal moments. I guess like everyone else, you remember the day that you graduate from boot camp and they call you Marine for the first time. That's huge. And you remember certain moments. I think the battle for Hue City will always stick with me for a lot of reasons, as both a highlight and a low point. We didn't know how to fight urban warfare in those days, and we really got cut up. We got hurt. The battle for Hue was a tough one, believe me, and it was kind of on the job training. We learned by doing, and that's a bloody way to learn. And I think that what makes it a high point is that I saw the real heart of the Marine Corps during the battle for Hue City, up against practically insurmountable odds in an environment we knew very little about. I saw some of the most extraordinary acts by young Marines. And I'm not talking about the guys with brass on their collar. I'm talking about Louis the Lance Corporal, you know, from Keokuk, Iowa. This guy was magic. He was wonderful. And what makes that a high point, what keeps that in my mind is that's the heart and soul of the Marine Corps. That's what we're about. That's what we do. That's what we have done throughout our history. And that's what we continue to do, I think, in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, where once again, it was OJT for the most part. Who knew about fighting in deserts? Well, we learned and we got it done. So those things stick out. I think it sticks out in my mind when I was commissioned. You know, that's another one of those boot camp moments, only advanced a bit. And I had a moment where I was shaving that morning and I was going to go down and get the bars pinned on. And I looked at myself and I said, you know, this is serious now. Now you're going to be responsible for a bunch of young men and women who are the legacy of those guys in Hue. And you got to do it right. And when the day comes that you can't look them in their beady ass eyeballs and say, gents, ladies, follow me. It is necessary that we die. When that day comes, that's the time to quit. So that was a seminal moment in my Marine Corps career. There are so many of them that it's hard to it's hard to call them all to mind, but those things stick out.
Thanks for sharing that. It's a good axiom to live by. If you can't lead them anymore, you probably shouldn't be. But I'm sure you could have made it to '05, definitely. You were an LDO captain, correct?
Yeah, right. Large dumb officer. Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah.
I didn't say that, sir, and I've never heard that before. So, what are some of your significant memories or projects from your time in Hollywood? You've shared Platoon. You have a lot more, though.
Yeah. I think at this point I have become the United States Army's favorite Marine because I have done a bunch of really great projects for them. Platoon, of course, is seminal to me because it was the start of my career, the start of some really staggering success that I've been fortunate to have. But other films stick out in my mind also. Casualties of War sticks out. And that sticks out because it was a negative story about the military. And I wanted to do it because I didn't want to be the guy who only does happy stories. We have screwed the pooch a couple of times as the United States military writ large. And I thought it was a good opportunity to do a film about that. And the good thing about that film was that the criminal activity is punished. And so you don't get away with it. And I thought that was the saving grace for Casualties of War. But we moved on to other really great films. We did, I will never forget, doing Band of Brothers, the miniseries for HBO. That's where I began a very tight relationship with Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg. And those are great friends to have in Hollywood, believe me. But we carried on with that and did the Pacific, which was the Marine side of the story. And, that was manna to me, manna from heaven to get to be able to do that one. Saving Private Ryan sticks out as probably a terrific project that we worked on. And the good news is that in all of those projects, because of my success, or the success of my methods, if you will, I was given a larger and more and increasingly important role in making the film. So I went from kind of off-camera military advisor to a dramatist, to a storyteller, to a filmmaker, and that has been enormously rewarding because once you reach that point, you're kind of in the club, and people listen to you, and there's potential for doing your own projects.
You worked on Greyhound recently with Tom Hanks, correct?
Yeah, and now I'm becoming the Navy's favorite Marine. It was a terrific show and reflected some insight, some light on one of the most underappreciated battles of World War II, and that's the Battle of the North Atlantic, fought by the Navy, which was in those little Fletcher-class destroyers that were tasked with escorting convoys across against U-boat wolf packs. And Tom, it's from a story by C.S. Forrester called The Good Shepherd. And Tom wrote the script, Tom Hanks, and said, look, can you exercise the anchor part of your emblem and come down and do this? And of course, I had spent significant time aboard ships as many of us do, in the Marine Corps, and I knew the Navy pretty well. And I have this facile ability to do research, and I did. I did a lot of technical research on 5-inch 38s and surface launch torpedoes and bridge work in the Fletcher-class destroyers, and was able to train on the USS Kidd, which is now a museum ship down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And so we made a crew and taught them how to launch depth charges and how to handle the 5-inch and how to handle we even got a 40 millimeter Bofors actually working aboard the Kidd. And that was a great experience. And And I think what it reflects is that if you do this right, and if you're smart about it, and you're willing to do research, you can do anything out here. What stymies people? And I get hundreds of emails and letters a week. I want to do what you do. I want to be you. The problem is, so many are limited in scope. Yeah, they've got maybe a 20 or 30-year career, or 4 good solid years in combat, with multiple deployments, but they don't know anything beyond that. They're not students of military history. They're not studying it. They can, if they're a Marine, they can only do Marine stuff. They don't know the Army stuff. They don't know how to do the Army stuff, and they'll do it incorrectly, just because they don't know. My theory has always been, in Warriors Incorporated, which is my company, my theory, my motto is that we'll do anything from Peloponnesian Wars to Star Wars, and we have done that. We did Alexander, for instance, which is ancient Greeks.
Yep.
We had to train and exercise a 256-man phalanx with 30-foot spears. So that took some research. And we've done Starship Troopers, for instance, which is the 25th century. In that case, I had to invent, come up with Space Marines. How do we do this? And you had to be very familiar with Heinlein's book, and you had to be able to, in your imagination, project what it would be like if we were fighting in an interplanetary environment, if you will. So that's the key, I think. You got to be a student, and you've got to be facile, and you've got to be able to handle it all.
Interesting. That's you definitely have added multiple layers to just what people might think. He's just a military consultant. No, you're almost kind of like a war history, military dramatist consultant. And probably a producer in many ways with what you do.
I think that's right, Joel. And you mature into it.
Yes.
There are some similarities to a billet that you get in the Marine Corps. It kind of expands. And you get into mission creep.
Yep.
And if you're smart, you can capitalize on that. But yeah, I started thinking, well, look, I'll just teach a little while and then back off. But that just wasn't my way. Once I got a taste of this, I said, whoa, I can watch this, I can do this, and I can do that. And lo and behold, you can't. You got to go at it low and slow, because Hollywood's a tough nut to crack. They're very careful about who they let into the inner circle. And that has to do with how much money is involved, and they don't want to share it, and so on. And it has to do with if you let anybody in, then we're not special anymore, and you know how that goes. The Marine Corps could probably teach them a lesson about that.
Yeah.
So if you're careful about how you wedge your way in and then expand from there, it's a formula for success.
Thanks for sharing that. The low, fly low and slow. There's much to be said about that. You fly radar basically, and you can, kind of pop up where they didn't expect you. Oh wow, he's doing this just like those people that called you. I think that's just wisdom across the board. Hiding in plain sight, even in another term. So, what is your proudest moment? You've shared so many of these different things. Do you have like a proudest moment of your life thus far you'd want to touch on?
It's hard to say. I've really been blessed, Joel, and I mean that in all sincerity. I turn around and I look where I came from and what I did, and there are so many proud moments, so many moments that I often wonder, how in the hell did I wind up doing that, and how did this happen? And they're all proud moments. I think when when I watch a young man or woman that I've trained or taught or helped succeed, that brings a huge smile to my face. I say, yeah, this is worth it. It's very difficult not to be self-centered when you're in Hollywood, which is made up of people who are me, worried about me. People who think that the sun rises and sets on their ass continuously. I like to take the other approach. I think some of my proudest moments are watching young men and women that I've trained or taught succeed. And they're not about to, and they don't need to recognize the fact that I had a little part in that, but I know I did. And when I watch them, maybe it has to do with the fact that I'm getting older than dirt now, but when I watch that, those are very proud moments.
You're still looking good, sir. Don't worry about it. Thanks for that. And, just to touch on some of your work in Hollywood, you've mentored and trained so many people. Have there been any individuals you'd like to share about that have trained you and mentored you during your time in Hollywood?
Well, there have been, yeah. There have been some enormous showbiz luminaries, I think, that have trained me or helped me or mentored me in so many ways. It has to start with Oliver Stone. I mean, if there's ever been two guys who are political opposites, it's me and Oliver Stone. But we understand that and we accept that and we get along with each other. But Oliver gave me my first big break, and he will always be in my heart because of that. I have to look at people like John Frankenheimer, who's dead now, unfortunately, and Billy Friedkin, who began to coach me. I mean, I think they saw when I was working on films with them, they saw that this guy's a little more than just that knuckle dragging nose picker. That this guy may have some skills, some talent as a storyteller, as a dramatist. And so they began to coach me. So Frankenheimer, Friedkin, Tom Hanks coaching me as an actor and as an advisor has been wonderful. Morgan Freeman has been very kind to me in acting. Morgan just took me under his wing and said, listen, do this, do that, and boom, he was right. And I think I'd have to include Steven Spielberg, who was exceedingly kind to me on Saving Private Ryan, and looked to me constantly as the guy who was going to judge whether he was doing it right or he was doing it wrong. And of course, he did it very right. So those are some of the names that leap to mind about people who've kind of mentored me. The key is their kindness. As I said, Hollywood is filled with people, nature of the beast, I guess, but it's filled with people who worry about themselves. What's my next job? How am I going to do this? How am I going to build my reputation? How am I going to jack up the star meter, if you will?
Yes.
But those guys that I mentioned were not concerned about that. Those were true dramatists. Those were true storytellers. And after all, that's what this is. That's what this business is. It's about telling stories in a visual fashion. And I've always been that guy anyway. I'm the guy around the campfire that can start a shaggy dog story and keep you entertained for an hour and a half, and it's a one-line gag. But I can do that. I've just always been that guy. And I think those mentors recognized that and said, maybe if we let this guy in and teach him a little bit, it might pay dividends. And I think it has.
Definitely. If there's one thing you could pass along to those listening to this podcast, veterans, Marines, civilians, what would that be from like a leadership standpoint and experience?
Well, I think it would be, don't denigrate or underestimate your military experience. Look, you could be the least trained rifleman in the rear rank, and you've been that for the past 4 years. there's a lot that you've learned, if by osmosis, if nothing else. You've learned about discipline. You've learned about self-reliance. You've learned about thinking, critical thinking. You've learned to work in a team environment. You've learned to work that it's not always about you, that there are larger things than you, like the mission and the welfare of the unit. Those are all extremely valuable lessons. So my advice would be, pay attention. Open your mind, open your heart. Stop thinking about, the next 15 minutes. Start thinking about what this experience will mean to you and determine to capitalize on it. I think that's something important. I think it's also, and this is going to sound a little touchy-feely here, but I think it's important to have a dream and to follow it. I did that. I didn't know what the hell the dream was until it finally materialized. But when you've got that dream, be tenacious. Understand that there's a line between being a complete jerk and being tenacious. Understand where that line is and walk that line. I think it's important to have a goal, to have something in mind in your life. I think it's important to understand that we are what we do. And what we do really frames all the rest of our life. It frames our relationships. It frames where we live and how we live. And I think those things are important. So learn, I guess. I think constantly learn. I do. I mean, I am never longer than about 20 minutes without a book in front of me and I'm reading it or I'm reading something online. Constantly learn, keep your mind active. People have a tendency to shut down, all right, this is what I do. I'm going to be this guy and my job involves this, this, and this, and I'll focus on that and I'll do it the best I can and everything else gets shut out. Don't do that. Keep your mind open and pursue trivial interests, if you will, because so often those trivial interests turn out to be really great living experiences. And I don't even remember what question you asked me, but there you go.
That's wonderful. I had asked you, if you could pass along one thing or what's important.
I just passed along about 9 things, but okay.
Hey, they're all great, and they're all from a lot of your a wealth of experience across many continents. So, are there any projects you're working on, things that you're looking forward to that you could share about?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. One of which I can't talk about right now because I'm under a non-disclosure agreement. But I have a project of my own called No Better Place to Die, which is an Army story, a D-Day story, 82nd Airborne. I want to kind of do for the 82nd Airborne what Band of Brothers did for the 101st Airborne. So I've got a great little story about the defense of a bridge that I want to do. It's called No Better Place to Die. I have a mini series, which is about one Marine rifle company in Korea. And it's 10 parts. And it has the spool up at Camp Pendleton in June of 1950 when they went around the whole base and started shanghaiing people and ripping clerks and jerks and people who had jobs at special services. They all ended up in rifle companies. And they even sent some people to war in Korea to fill out units without ever sending them to boot camp. They literally went from some reserve unit in Kansas City right into combat. And I know that happened. I've talked to several of them. So that's a 10-part miniseries, and it's called The Forgotten War. I want to do that, and I have my publishing company called Warriors Publishing Group is doing great now. That's me not being able to sit still for 15 minutes. So we've got about 25 or 26 great titles out there. We're now a publishing company, including my own stuff. So my Shake Davis series, the File series, which if you're a Marine, you need to read. has been doing great. All of that's available at Warriors Publishing Group or Amazon.com. You can just look it up. And the Shake Davis series, Shake's a retired Marine gunner, and he gets into all of these situations. So that's been going great. We've got, as I said, we've got about 25, 26 really great titles. So we're making success hand over fist. We've got John Del Vecchio's 13th Valley is in our library now. And I've got a new book that's going to come out in May, which is called The Korean Odyssey. And it's that story about that one Marine rifle company. And it takes them all the way through to the end of the Chosin Reservoir campaign, from spool up in June of 1950 all the way through to the end of the Chosin Reservoir campaign. So that one will be released in May. And I'm keeping busy. You know, the dreaded Rona has put a crack in all kinds of things. There was a time when I didn't know if showbiz was ever going to start up again. You know, but we're gradually moving into it, and you know, as the inoculations get more common and more people are able to get them, I'm hoping that some of these projects that have been just in limbo because nobody knows where we're going to go, and theaters aren't open, and so it's put a big cramp in showbiz. But again, it's tenacity. You know, I'm not willing to give this up. It's going to come back, or you know, I'll just die in place. Who knows? But the point is, I'm not going to just desert and walk away from it.
Well said. And those Korean War stories, the Korean War story you have, those are, you know, things that need to be told, and really, I can't think of a successful Hollywood Marine Korean War film in the past probably 50 years. And I may be wrong, but I you know, that's a story that's been forgotten about in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is. It's underappreciated. And what got me thinking about it, Joel, was it back in the very early 60s, when I was getting ready for my own combat crucible, my own experiences of combat, the Korean War vets were still in the Corps, still serving, and they taught me some stuff. I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that some of the things that those Korean War veterans taught me in training, the little insights, you know, the stuff that isn't in the field manual, some of those things kept me alive in Vietnam. And I've always been grateful about that. I thought, you know, Jesus, those guys don't get enough respect. You know, it was an inconclusive war, much like the war in Vietnam, frankly. And they came home to not much respect. Nobody wanted to hear about it because it wasn't a big win. And I thought, they're underappreciated. They're underserved. People need to know more about this. And so with my books and with my ability to write fiction for the screen, I decided to take a look. I'm going to get them their due.
Excellent. Well, you're no better man to do it. So.
Well, I hope so, because I'm gonna give it hell. I mean, I think it's time. And there's so many extraordinary stories. You know, it makes us poor bastards who fought in Vietnam and fought in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, amateur hour compared to what those guys went through. And I think that's important. I think because we're the legacy of those guys. And I want them recognized.